great pleasure to welcome all of you tonight for what is our second annual town hall on issues of significance to the youth of Chicago. We're very proud of them. I'm sure you'll want to listen carefully to what they have to say. Each of you will have an opportunity to look at the booklet that they prepared over the summer, passionate essays titled, "Don't Shoot, I Want to Grow Up."
I must grow up.
That's the essay book. Tonight is We Must Grow Up. I was getting to that. Anyway, as you can see, they're raring to go. They are not afraid to challenge their elders. In fact, I was privileged to sit in our conference room when they met face-to-face with Chicago Police Superintendent Gary McCarthy. And each of them said his or her piece, and then he challenged them, hey, I need some solutions. So we had a special team working on what does work to prevent this epidemic of youth violence in our city. Columbia Links is a program that was started in about 6 years ago by me and by Associate Professor Curtis Lawrence. It uses journalism as a skills building and leadership program for urban teens. Before I turn this over to our wonderful executive director, I just wanted to recognize a couple of people. In the back there, give us a wave. Assistant Dean of the School of Media Arts, Charles Castle, who's representing our school, which has also provided a lot of elements, including facilities, etc., including the classrooms for our teens. And I don't know if he's here yet, but Mark Hallett, representing the McCormick Foundation, there he is, our primary funder. So we give thanks to all of them. Now the main event, thank you. The main event tonight is to focus on the teens and their voices. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our incredible executive director of Columbia Links, Ms. Brenda Butler.
Thank you, Nancy, very much. I'm not going to tarry here too long, but I want to give a shout. I'd love to see all these young faces. So I want to thank the teen groups who are present. And I'm going to kind of name you, and you can give me a shout out. True Star, are you in the house? Free Spirit Media, in the house? The Black Youth Project, in the house? Not yet. Salvation Army, in the house? All right. The Red Vest of the United Methodist Church, they're in the house, coming down the aisle right now. And the returning Columbia Links teens, who you'll meet shortly. Am I missing any other teen groups who are out there? Want to give a shout out?
Well, Youth Communication Chicago, which is...
All right. Hi, Charles. How are you doing? All right. I think we can all agree that there are many groups out there that should be here tonight. And that's part of our effort, to reach out to them and bring their voices here to join the discussions so that we are part of the solution. While some teens are presenting society and themselves challenges, there are so many more of you who have ideas about what to do about the violence in their communities. We're going to have a town hall discussion. It's one thing I can promise you, there won't be any speeches, just ideas for what's working and what's not, and action plans. Here's a video that showcases what the 5 teens have been working on this summer.
On this block and throughout the city here in this neighborhood, they belong to the residents of the city of Chicago. They do not belong to the gangbangers.
In November 2011, the Chicago Police Department identified more than 73 active street gangs with an estimated membership ranging from 68,000 to more than 150,000 in the Chicago metropolitan area.
And there's going to be a real crossover between public health and public safety for that exact reason. Because it's not just gunshots that are killing people in places, you know, where there's high crime. Things like obesity, heart disease, cancer, all sorts of public health risks.
Many Chicago communities with the highest homicide rates have more than double the rates of deaths due to breast cancer, kidney disease, and prostate cancer than all other Chicago communities.
My name is Kyler Sumter. I'm 15 and I live in Ashburn. Last year, I got an email from my counselor about Columbia Links, and it just stood out to me because I want to be a journalist when I grow up, and this is what I want to do.
I'm Alan Peck, and I'm a student at Columbia Links. I'm involved to bring attention to the immediate response to violence.
I'm Wesley Bogard. I'm 17 years old. I'm a senior at Harlan Community Academy, and I stay on the Rosa community. I feel like I'm involved in the project simply for the fact it gives me a voice, and I feel like nowadays a lot of people my age don't have a voice in a way they could challenge it towards a positive route.
Matthew Weddig. I am 17 and I live in the Lakeview community. I heard about Columbia Links through my school newspaper, which I became involved with to further my journalistic experience.
I'm Lily Moore. I'm 15 and I live on the far north side. I've always really liked journalism, and I kind of think of it as like another art form. You're always connected to the world, and you can always like make a difference with your writing.
Enough. Let's help each other. Do something about this situation.
How big do you think like the crack epidemic in that period of time affected in deunifying the black community?
It destroyed us.
A part of the project I'm working on is telling the story of teens and their opinions on violence. Firsthand, I've experienced people being jumped, fist fights, even people being hit with objects and even stabbed.
We're not the problem. We're suffering from an institutional, systemic problem that has been imposed on our community.
It's kind of hard to have to hear about it, like to hear that there are 435 homicides in my city. It's kind of hard to stomach that happens so often and that it's becoming normal for that to happen. I'm focused on preventing violence, how we will prevent people from joining gangs and causing more violence. You're not just telling a story, but you're telling the story.
I'm working on the community aspect and how different people or groups and communities, possible methods they have in attacking violence, per se. Violence affects people as a public health issue in a multitude of ways, in that it causes physical and psychological stress on people.
This past summer, when I went to go do an interview for Columbia because I was part of the summer I team, there was a shooting right before I was supposed to do my interview, and I guess I'm trying to like really portray violence as a public health issue.
Because it affects people in many ways. People normally say that victims are not the only victims. It affects people by having diabetes, high blood pressure, hypertension. So when you are put in an environment where you have all these different diseases being thrown around, they are known as public health issues.
My message is that I think we all have a voice, and if you challenge it in the right way, your voice can be significant.
Before I introduce our moderator this evening, I'd like to say that the people who are on the first two rows here are going to be on the stage, so they can actually, so those of you who are not seated can come and sit in the first two rows once they get up on the stage. Thank you. If I can get a little bit of light. Thank you very much, Brian. I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker. We're so fortunate to have her. And as I read her bio, and I'm condensing it, you'll see why she's perfect for this. As the reporter for WBEZ's South Side Bureau in Inglewood, Natalie Moore covers news and issues in that community and surrounding areas. Prior to joining WBEZ staff in May of 2007, she was a City Hall reporter for the Detroit News. She has also been an education reporter for the St. Paul Pioneer Press and a reporter for the Associated Press in Jerusalem. Natalie's work has been published widely. Ebony, Essence, Chicago Tribune, In These Times, Chicago Sun-Times, just to name a few. and she's the author of 2 books. Number 1, Deconstructing Tyrone, a new look at Black masculinity in the hip-hop generation. And most recently, she was the co-author of the, quote, The Almighty Black Keystone Nation, The Rise, Fall, and Resurgence of an American Gang. Let's give a warm welcome to Natalie Moore.
Thank you, Brenda. Wow, packed house, standing room only. And to clarify, I'm not your keynote speaker. You do not want to hear from me. We are really here to hear from the students. So I'm the moderator to help lead this discussion along, and I'm really excited. This afternoon I got to read some of the students' works, and you will get to take that with you this evening. And when we talk about youth violence, I believe that reporters, activists, experts, law enforcement don't get the voices from youth. So that will not be our agenda today. So I'm going to start bringing up folks who we'll hear from after the students present their reports. But first, I would like the students who wrote essays in the Don't Shoot, I Want to Grow Up to come on the stage and take the back rows. And we do have a wide range of people we're going to hear from, and we want to hear from you as well. There will be no cards going around later. But first, I would like to introduce some experts and community activists who will sit in this row on my right, your left. Do we have Diane Latiker here yet? I have not seen her. Okay. We have Harold Polak, who's co-director of the University of Chicago Crime Lab, and he's an expert on the intersection of poverty policy and public health to reduce violence. We have Roosevelt Von Ill, president of the Greater Chatham Alliance, an organization that works to improve the viability of the community. Bob Jackson, who is executive director of Ceasefire in Roseland. Woo! And I do know we have this last person here, Hugh H. Tontat, who is a doctor and assistant professor of surgery, trauma, and emergency division at Loyola University Medical Center, and he is an advocate for combating youth violence. And now we have Diane Latiker in the house. And we have a variety of community people who will sit on the remaining rows in the back. First, from the city of Chicago, we have Evelyn Diaz, who is the commissioner of the Department of Family and Support Services, after serving as CEO of the Chicago Workforce Investment Council. Ronald Holt, a police officer and father of Blair Holt, who was a victim of gun violence, and he's founder of Purpose Over Pain, which was formed in 2007 through the Chicago Police Department CAPS program with 7 families who've lost their children to gun violence. Michael Simmons, Team Reach lead leader, the Salvation Army, Chicago Temple Court. Karen Sheehan, who's a doctor in pediatric emergency medicine and professor of pediatrics at Northwestern University's Feinberg School of Medicine. We have Jason Smith and Tyrone Hudson, juvenile probation officers. And again, we have cards that are available for people to write in questions, and we're also soliciting questions via Twitter. Is there a hashtag, Brenda?
Kevin? Yes, there is.
Okay. Okay, when I get that hashtag, I will announce it. Otherwise, write your questions on note cards. I'd like to introduce Celia Daniels. She's a Columbia Links mentor, and she served as the fall I-Team coordinator for the project Violence as a Public Health Issue. Celia has been a reporter and editor at the Chicago Sun-Times, Tribune, Detroit Free Press, and St. Petersburg Times. So let's welcome Celia. Oh, and one more person, I'm sorry that I did not say, Angela Hongo, who is from Pill Hill.
Good evening, everyone. And, welcome to part 2 of Columbia Link's examination of violence and its impact on young people. Some of you, of course, are familiar with our booklet, Don't Shoot, I Want to Grow Up. Think about that. Don't shoot, I want to grow up. Those are powerful words taken from essays and letters to the mayor and the police superintendent from 22 students enrolled last summer in Columbia Links. Some of them are here tonight. But those hot summer nights are gone now. And we are waking up to a cold reality that is leaving Chicagoans, particularly our children, with a sickening feeling that something is wrong. No, we are not well. The gang and gun violence this city continues to experience is a public health and safety issue. So far, the Chicago Police Department has reported 438 homicides this year, already 10 just this month. Violence is a disease that is a serious health threat to young and old, rich and poor, and disproportionately affecting young people of color. The costs are rising too. Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle estimates the cost to treat each uninsured gunshot victim at Stroger Hospital at $52,000. The National Gun Victims Action Council estimates taxpayers spend more than $5 billion a year to cover the costs of U.S. gun homicides. That would repair a lot of schools, roads, and bridges. As with many diseases, youth violence is preventable and treatable if communities get involved early. The consequences of ignoring symptoms can lead to the spread of crime, to more neighborhoods, and even an increase in other serious health problems for residents. This latest investigative report on violence, Don't Shoot, I Must Grow Up, by 5 high school students, examines how 4 Chicago communities are treating this outbreak. The I-Team targeted the Southside communities of Beverly, Chatham, Roseland, and Calumet Heights. The reporters chronicled the efforts of neighborhood groups to identify or diagnose, to intervene, and to treat the violence found in their communities, much like doctors fighting cancer. The reporters also found that it takes more than police. It takes people to halt the spread of youth violence. Today, more than ever, multiple players, parents, teens, police, schools, churches, doctors, and government recognize the urgency in coming together to treat violent crime as a disease. I think we can all agree that the time for strictly punitive measures, such as just locking them all up, has passed. Even Police Superintendent Gary McCarthy says we can't arrest our way out of gangs and guns. So what does work? Mentoring and early intervention programs that teach young people social skills such as conflict resolution and how to set goals, studies show. A University of Chicago study found that just relocating families to better neighborhoods helped improve their mental and physical outlook. Public health helps communities understand their stake in preventing youth violence and finding remedies. For we all know that we can't afford to lose another generation to violence. As you meet these 5 teams, you will hear a common thread repeated, that youth violence is a disease, a public health crisis that affects everyone. But like most diseases, it is preventable and treatable. The I-Team report will show how these 4 communities have a prescription to root out and defeat violence. So I'd like to introduce the 5 young reporters. I'm going to start Wesley Bogart. Wesley's a Harlan senior, and he will tell you about a mother who says one possible remedy to youth violence is for everyone in the neighborhood to parent children who are left to raise themselves. She reaches out to Rosa teens through her organization, Kids Off the Block. Wesley, you want to come up? Have a seat. Next is Lily Moore. She's a Northside College Prep 10th grader. She will report on the toll violence takes on teens and the community. Lily talked with doctors who were among the first group to recognize violence as a disease and public health and safety issue. Lily. Next is Alan Peck, a Mount Carmel junior, who will report on intervention and prevention programs that teach boys about setting goals instead of firing guns, and how relocating families changes more than just addresses. Next, Matthew Wedding, Lane Tech Jr., who knows the importance of residents' involvement after attending a lively meeting of a Chatham community group. Meanwhile, we will hear from him how ignoring the symptoms of violence can be deadly. Finally, Kyler Sumter, a Lindblom sophomore. Kyler will report on teens who are helping other young people turn away from gangs and turn their lives around.
Hi, I'm Wesley Bogart. I'm a 17-year-old senior at Harlan Community Academy High School, and I'm from the Roseland neighborhood. And my story focused on the Kids Off the Block program founded by Diane Latiker in July 2003. The program provides enrichment for Roseland teens through sports and music. During the process of creating my story, I was able to interview Diane Latiker and several teenagers on the topic of violence and how it can be remedied. I found it interesting that all the people I interviewed agreed that violence is a problem that can only be solved internally. By unifying our communities and educating ourselves on the topics that affect us the most. The disease of violence may not be an illness cured quickly, but with the patience and the plans of action, there's no limit to what can be accomplished.
My name is Lily Moore, and I am reporting on the long-term effects of violence.
Lily, can you just stop for a minute, because the more people are coming in, we want everybody to hear what you have to say. So just take a breath and then get started again once in a while. Thank you.
I'm reporting on the long-term effects of violence. We as young people think we are invincible. Many young people get involved in gang and gun violence and don't seem to realize some of the most drastic outcomes of the violence. Most kids seem to think that violence leads to either death or jail. Joel Irizarry is the director of the In My Shoes program, a program that works to educate kids about the possibility of paralysis and brain injuries as a consequence of violence. Irizarry suffered a bullet to the spine when he was 17, and he has not been able to walk for 14 years. He feels that people are rarely aware of these serious injuries as an outcome of violence, when most people seem to think that violence leads to death or jail. Joel Irizarry said, "When you think about it, it's kind of the best of both worlds. Half of me is dead, and half of me is confined to this wheelchair. This is my prison for the choices that I made." Dr. Tom Tatt of the Loyola University Medical Center says most victims of spinal cord injuries are young and will have to suffer these injuries for the rest of their lives. Research by the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation Paralysis Research Center shows that 23% of spinal cord injuries are caused by violence. More than half of spinal cord victims and paralysis victims make less than $25,000 a year, showing that violence is keeping the affected neighborhoods in poverty. Dr. Karen Sheehan of the Ann and Robert H. Laurie Children's Hospital of Chicago has identified other costly and unrecognized outcomes of violence. Children exposed to violence from a young age are more likely to suffer depression, obesity, and diabetes into adulthood. More and more doctors are joining the fight against violence, hoping for an end to this costly public health issue.
My story focused on the aspect of community activism and the effects that it has on different Southside communities. And as part of my assignment, I attended a Greater Chatham Alliance meeting. They work with local politicians, police, and other related groups to stay on top of what's happening in their community. Throughout the meeting, tensions rose between the residents and the local police commander, as many thought not enough was being done to combat violence. Another community that is just waking up to the violence is the Pill Hill subsection of Calumet Heights. In once a relatively safe community, a string of violent crimes spawning after a Labor Day shooting, in total leaving 3 people dead and 4 injured, is forcing them to confront their issues.
I'm Kyler Sumter, and for my story, I focused on how to prevent the violence and how to prevent people from joining gangs. I looked at how community organizations have had success with preventing violence. I specifically looked at Ceasefire. Ceasefire is a community organization that helps bring the community together. They promote looking out for your neighbors and stopping the violence in its tracks. They do work as the interrupters, where they go out to stop the conflicts they see before they escalate into fights. Ceasefire also thinks of violence like a public health issue, the same way we do at Columbia Links. The CEO of Roseland Ceasefire, Bob Jackson, said if they had the flu, you would give them a flu shot. Since it's violence, we give them the violence shot. The most important part is that Ceasefire does work with young people, the target audience for violence. The young people I talk to volunteer and work at Ceasefire. They have seen the violence firsthand. Some of them have been in gangs, so they know how serious the issue is. They believe the best way to keep other young people from joining gangs is to keep them from being informed. They see several ways to do this, like giving the young people opportunities, getting them off the streets, and to have a father in your life, someone who will be a role model for you and keep you away from the bad people in the neighborhood. The good thing about Ceasefire is that it acts like a father to the community.
Hi, I'm Alan Peck, and in regards to violence as a public health issue, Dr. Pollack of the University of Chicago says that it is very difficult for kids in the city of Chicago. As a young man myself, I can attest that it is very difficult growing up in a city where most of the violence is targeted towards young people. However, there's a fast-growing program that is preventing young men from staying on the streets. According to the crime lab, the young boys are usually lost to the streets at the ages 12 to 13. BAM, which is an acronym for Becoming a Man, has found remedies to help boys from getting in trouble. Started by Youth Guidance and World Support Chicago, the initiative is to intervene with the youth so that they have a better insight towards their future. Though the BAM program is helping to improve grades and the youth are less likely to get arrested, they are still in a state of high defense. They appreciate those who come and intervene in their lives, but if someone were to steal a $70 jacket and their mom cannot buy them another, they would have to fight. According to Dr. Pollack, teens need an adult to help them self-regulate their goals and let them see their roadmap to how to achieve those goals. Analysis shows that when students were under the direction of BAM, they were less likely to be arrested for violent offenses and their grade point averages rose. They were also dealing better with adults and doing their homework. These are the kind of remedies that really help the kids in the intervention. Moving to Opportunity also ran a study, and it showed that violence as a public health issue has become increasingly greater over the past 5 years. Studies have shown that people who live in highly concentrated areas have diseases such as high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, and etc. However, when these people are moved out of these violent communities, their health started to increase, and along with it, they have these ravaging diseases. Violence affects everyone, Dr. Pollack says. He believes that there needs to be an immediate response because he stated that if there was a national response to the banks going bankrupt, there needs to be the same sense of urgency with the violence of today. Crime is taken too lightly, he says, and many have fallen blind to the issue. Thank you.
Let's give another round of applause for this wonderful work that we heard from students. I did omit someone who is on stage. We have Marcus Carruthers, who's a former gang member, and he's now a producer, filmmaker, and motivational speaker. And I have a hashtag for you now. For those of you who want to tweet your questions, it's Don't Shoot No 15. So that's Don't Shoot NOV 15. In addition, the cards, index cards for questions are being passed around now. What I'd like to do now from our first row is to have you each individually respond to the students' reports or comment in general about public health and violence as you see it in Chicago. And you can take the mic off and pass it around to each other.
Well, good evening, everyone. Young people, that was awesome. That was really awesome. And I want to commend all the young people who, everyone is not in gangs. All the young people are not trying to kill each other. And some of them really want to see their comrades live and have a life. As far as it being a health issue, it's definitely a health issue for the community. When the young people are the perpetrator and the victims, it tears two families apart in that same community. When it continues to grow in that same community, you can see the devastation of it because the community itself suffers. And everything in it suffers because it's not taken care of, because people are grieving. And I've seen mothers and fathers grieving, and the whole family is just set aside for that moment of disbelief that they've lost someone in their family to such senselessness. So yes, to me it is a health issue. As far as a parent, I'm a parent of 8. I have 4 boys and 4 girls of my own. Believe me, living in the community with 8 kids and knowing the community, and I wanted to run. I wanted to just get up and pack and go and say be done with it. But I figured I'd have to fight wherever I went. So I decided to stay. And I'm just a mom. I'm just a grandmother. But I just wanted to stay to see if I could make an impact. And as far as the blame, I don't want to blame one entity, one person. I think we are responsible. I think we all play a part. I think even the young people play a part. I think we've all got to recognize, we have to recognize what's going on, that we're losing generations, and we will continue to lose them until we step up and step out and say enough is enough. Thank you.
Well, that's kind of an impossible act to follow. This has been terrific, and you guys did a great job. And now I've been a public health researcher for a long time, and I was really gratified to see the public health frame that we need to view violence through. It is definitely a public health problem, and there are very few evil people involved in this. The people who perpetrate violence, the people who are victims of violence, they're human beings who are often in difficult situations where they need help. And one of the things that Alan mentioned, the work that we did in BAM, and I'm so proud of my colleagues at Youth Guidance and World Sport Chicago who worked with young people and allowed us to evaluate what they were doing. And when I talk to young people, one of the things that really strikes me is it's hard to be a 17-year-old kid in Chicago. It is hard. And people have good values. Kids have good values, but they have to get to school every day, and they live in, and they have to be tough. And as adults, we really have to step up for them and not leave it to kids to solve these problems on their own. it's not surprising to me that a lot of kids join gangs, because that's one route that kids believe they can be safe, is getting together with their kids. And I think one of the things that comes with the public health frame is we need the right combination of urgency and also patience and being methodical. We have to figure out what works and really do that over a long period of time and stick with it. And one of the things that makes me optimistic is that there's a lot of good things going on in the city of Chicago. And there's a real sense of, hey, we have to be smart about reducing violence, and we have to be serious about it. And I think events like tonight reflect that. So with that, I'll just pass on the microphone.
Although, Dr. Pollack, I have a follow-up for you based on the research that you do. Do you think that in policy circles in Chicago and among city officials who are trying to decrease youth violence or violence in general, that there's enough discussion about the role of poverty when it comes to violence?
Well, that's a very good question. I think actually the problem is not so much the people that you've identified, it's the broader society. I do feel like people really, I think in America as a whole, people don't appreciate the catastrophic conditions that economically that a lot of people are going through in this community. And you wander through Inglewood, Roseland, many neighborhoods, you look at the abandoned houses and the people who've been foreclosed or who are looking for jobs. There is a lack of national urgency about these problems, which makes the violence problem hard to solve in two really difficult ways. First of all, there are just more people living in really difficult circumstances. And families in stress, there's plenty of moms who just, they're working an extra job, or they just don't have the money and the time to provide the mentoring to their child that they need to keep their child safe. And also, we don't have the money for interventions that we need to do because of the state and local budget crisis. So I think that that we all have a responsibility. I think it's not so much the people in this room tonight and the city folks. It's really the broader society. It is striking to me that Alan mentioned the savings and loan crisis and the financial meltdown. We spent hundreds of billions of dollars to rescue banks because people appreciated, hey, we need a working financial system. There is not that same urgency about people getting shot every day. And it's just as profound a problem. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's certainly a long filibuster, so.
That was great. We do have some seats in the front, so folks who are standing against the wall, you can come fill that in. Thank you, Dr. Pollack.
I'm Roosevelt Obama with the Greater Chatham Alliance. Let me first say that, my heart goes out to our young people. I know what you're going through, and when I say that, I came of age during Jeff Ford and Hoover and all the recruiting that was going on. You got a problem when your kids have got to figure out how to navigate home before they do homework. You have a problem when public school systems spend less money on children than we do incarcerating people in jail. You got a problem when you slap your child at home and your child slaps someone later, because that's where some of the violence starts at. I've raised my children not to, I've tried to raise my children not to be violent with each other. I've tried never to discipline my kids in that way growing up. And I know sometimes you got to spread a rod in certain kinds of ways. But I think that a lot of the violence that our children experience, they learn it at home. It's like we think it's discipline, but we live in a different era. We just can't, do our children or treat our children in that manner anymore. My concern is that you not have to navigate your way home. And it's a difficult world for our young people, and my heart really do go out for you in terms of navigating that world. But it's up to us as adults to take some of these young people under our wings to help them navigate the life that they have to go through. We try to do some community policing and that kind of thing to help some of this situation. There's another kind of violence. I live in the Chatham area. Violence against seniors now. It's a serious crime in terms of our areas now. All the dismantling of public housing and all the moving of people in certain communities that were not previously the kind of communities where you experience that kind of violence. It's okay to move people, but there's a certain decorum and a certain expectation for behavior and certain kinds of support systems that are required to move people from one environment to another environment that they're not accustomed to, and we need to keep that in mind also. There are a lot of things we could talk about. We will never solve all of tonight. We will be here forever.
I'm one of the doctors at the trauma centers around that sees patients when they come in, after injuries or injuries from gun violence, and I recognize that by the time I see them, that's a failure of a lot of systems already. I mean, that's failures of legal systems, of economic systems, health systems, social networks. So, I mean, our team is great. We do our best to control the damage and try to get these people back to their lives. But I think we have to recognize, and I think the students did a great job of showing that we're all connected in this, that there's a lot of different facets, and that those of us who are kind of empowered members of this whole cycle, we have to speak up and we have to do our part. And the other thing is, when patients are with us, this is a learning moment. I mean, hopefully, that's the best case scenario from this. And if we can partner with other organizations, other people in this cycle, like Ceasefire does with their hospital programs, to come into the hospitals at this kind of critical moment for these patients and their families, and get to them, help them, go out to the community, and try to quell this this cycle. I think that's something that we could do besides just putting a Band-Aid on this.
You mentioned that by the time victims get to you, it's too late. They're dealing with very serious injuries. But because you have that frontline view, is there anything that the medical community can do when it comes to stopping youth violence? Or
I mean, I really see myself as on one end, I cut and sew and I do those things, but medicine is not just about cutting and sewing. We have two doctors up here. It's about health and prevention and injury prevention. I think that medicine, that's where the money is. I mean, that's where money is most efficiently spent. It's not what I do.
So we've talked a little bit about poverty, and the neighborhoods that experience the most violence tend to be the most segregated. In Chicago, we've heard about Roseland, Inglewood, those neighborhoods, blight, foreclosures, lack of retail, lack of grocery stores, in addition to having all those preventable diseases affecting residents. But Chatham, Pill Hill, if I could bring Angela into the conversations, Pill Hill is a neighborhood with manicured lawns and great houses, and traditionally a very stable middle to upper class Black community, but that area is not immune to violence.
Good evening, everyone. I have a story. My story goes from birth to death of two young men. One of the young men is my son. Another young man was his best friend. In my neighborhood, I am like the house among house because I have a trampoline. So everyone comes to my house since they were like 4 years old to jump on my trampoline. My son's best friend, his name was Derek, lived a block away. His grandmother was the mother of the neighborhood because she babysat everyone from my age to my children. The two boys went to school together, they graduated together, they went to high school. The weekend of Labor Day, there was a killing across the street from my house of a gentleman. This gentleman's brother believed that my son's friend, Derek, may have been one of the persons that killed his brother. He retaliated. This was September 1st of the killing. September 2nd, which was a Sunday, he went to their home and he shot 4 people. An 11-year-old was shot, Derek's mother was shot, Derek's brother was shot, and another friend of theirs was shot. None fatal. On September 28th, my son, my daughter, A lot of the kids were on the block. Car drove up, shot Derek, killed him, 2 bullets to the head. Derek died in my son's arms. My daughter said that she saw him change colors, and I explained to her that was his soul leaving his body. We went to the funeral. There were children. It was very difficult for everyone. One person that did not attend the funeral was Derek's grandmother. She could not attend. The boys would not leave the cemetery for at least an hour, even after the casket went into the ground. Everyone was very devastated. Funeral was October 5th. On October 9th, my son received a phone call from his sister that some other gentlemen were threatening her on the bus. He's still in mourning. He told me at the time he got the phone call, he was at the area where Derek had got shot. He said, I was just standing there thinking about what had happened. In his mind, he went and he got a gun. And he went to where his sister was in hopes of her not getting killed. He ended up getting stopped by the police and he went to jail. On October 11th, I became ill. I could not walk for 3 days. On October 19th, Derek's grandmother became ill. She got a headache. She subsequently died. On October 20th, the very next day, Derek's father passed away. On today, because of the crime my son committed, he's now on his way to St. Charles, which is downstate prison for juveniles. All of this violence affected all of us and reaches beyond even the people that I mentioned, because it goes to the physical and it goes to the mental, which are all health related. We worry, we're scared, your blood pressure goes up. I didn't hear from my sister today. I didn't hear from my brother today. You get upset, you get anxious. What's going on? Something must have happened. That's what violence does to everyone. And even if you don't know that person, you don't have to know them. You hear it on the news. Am I gonna be next? Is it gonna be my neighborhood? What's going to happen? So we talk about resolutions and we talk about solutions and what can we do. Most people in society today are afraid. I may be the next one. They may retaliate if I say something or if I snitch, is what they call it on the street. In my situation, I am a vigilante, if you will. All of the thugs will come to my house and people will say, why do you let them in your house? Well, the police are gonna look at you and this is what they're gonna do. You know this one? Well, this is what I do. Have a bat. And when they come to my house and they do something that they're not supposed to, if I smell weed, if your pants is not where they're supposed to be, if you got talk coming out your mouth, I will swap you. I thought it would run them away. But they come back. And you know what they say? Mom, why you do that? I said, why are you calling me mom? Because you're the only one to tell me that I was doing something wrong. You're the only one to say, baby, I'm gonna pray for you. Or you know you really need to get a job or go back to school. Most of these kids out here don't have anyone to talk to. They don't have anywhere to go, so they turn to the gangs. And then they scare us to death by raising our blood pressure because we don't speak up. If you speak up and become involved, they will have somewhere to go, someone they can confide in when there's nowhere else to go but to the drug dealer and to the gangbang.
Thank you so much. Marcus, I did actually want to go to you next. Angela, I don't think most of us thought that the turn in her story would go that way with the bat, letting the young people in and them saying you actually care. I think there is a culture of fear in our communities where adults do not engage with youth, not just the so-called good youth, but also the so-called gangbangers and youth who are doing nefarious things on the street. Marcus, can you talk a little bit about your experience as a former gang member and respond to some of the things that Angela is talking about?
Yes, definitely, and I totally relate. My name is Marcus Carruthers, and I was born and raised on the south side of Chicago, in an area where we actually breed violence and breed killers, breed rapists, breed robbers, breed felons, drug pushers, drug addicts. I come from an area in Bronzeville, used to be called the Robert Taylor Projects, and pretty much at age 14, I can remember I was a straight A student, and I noticed that once I transitioned from 8th grade into high school, I graduated most outstanding student. Every boy in my peer group either got initiated with a Gangster Disciple Street Mob, Black Disciple Street Mob, Black Peace Stone, Vice Lords, and I found myself in a world all by myself. The need to be accepted got me initiated in the Gangster Disciple Street Mob. And if I had to diagnose what's going on in our communities right now, I always related to the people that I know and the area where I grew up in. We were never showed unconditional love from another man, meaning a strong figure. A lot of those figures, men and fathers, were absent. So there was never a problem taking the life of another man. We are deprived of good morals, ethics, and values. And based off of that, we kind of got tangled up in situations to whereas in order to receive that act of praise, we would kill another person or commit a violent act. For me, it was a sense of empowerment to establish fear in the person next door to me, down the street from me. I was not the young man that you wanted to walk on the same side of the street with. And this was all I knew. My mom was drug addicted, my father was drug addicted. There was no guidance. Lack of guidance influenced my decision making. And which is, is doing this with any and every 7, 8-year-olds are fully acquainted with acts of violence and being praised for it in my community. I can't speak for everybody else's community. Me being a straight A student, if I became a part of the Gangster Disciple Street Mob, a known drug pusher, stick-up artist, and all of this, and I was a straight A student, how much more susceptible is a child that's not a straight A student, that didn't have the God-given sense to make a right or wrong decision? In my situation, I knew I was making the wrong decision by becoming initiated, but like so many others, there was nothing else to turn to. There was nothing solid, there was nothing strong. So we talk about the prevention of violence. We're raised with violence. We're born into impoverished situations to whereas in order to gain a superiority, we're gonna rob somebody next door, or take something from somebody down the street, or even commit abuse against a female or woman, if it came down to it. There's no restriction. And this is a vicious cycle. If we talk about the 17 and 18-year-olds that are committing crimes right now, a lot of these kids are giving birth, making babies, committing we're actually introducing a whole new generation behind them to violence as well. I looked up to the guys that were 20, 21, 22 years old. These were the gangsters, the pushers, and these were my role models. And there's a lot of kids right now, that's all they have is either the rap artist on TV or the local drug dealer down the street as role models. This is my world, and this cycle continues. Will it stop? I think it starts in the households first. I think we need to attack this early on. We need to talk to 5-year-olds about violence. We can't wait till they're 16, 17 years old because they're already numb. You know, and there's nothing that anyone can say to stop a guy that's making $5,000 a day on the street hustling, robbing, whatever, that he needs to stop and work at McDonald's. You know, this is a situation that's it's embedded deep in the minds of our youth that they need to commit acts of darkness and violence in order to survive in today's society.
Marcus, how did you become a former gang member?
As a teenager, 17, 18 years old, I was convicted of attempted murder, aggravated kidnapping, and home invasion. This was the remedy for my violent acts like so many others. And upon getting into the Cook County jail system, you know, I spoke about this once before. I was in an institution where everybody had murders and armed robberies and kidnapping charges just like myself. And to see these guys, these hardened criminals, the ones you see on the news and you read about in the newspaper, crying with remorse. I should have listened to my mom. I should have never went left. I should have, would have, could have, but it's too late. A lot of the bodies and the people that go inside these institutions never come home. So is that remedy in the situation? I don't know. Because right now, today, I can recall when you can at least have a bed when you're going in the Cook County jail system. Now there's so many inmates, you don't even have room. For me, my personal relationship with God kicked in, you know, my faith, you know, having a strong grandmother, you know, I pretty much acknowledge, you know, having a good sense of common sense that I had made a bad decision. So for me, my rehabilitation, the changing and renewing of my mind began the day I got incarcerated, to answer your question. And I just felt compelled through that to tell my story to the world. So my filmmaking ministry is actually speaking out on violence, how decisions determine destiny, how desperation breeds mistakes. And that's pretty much my story. And it's reached from New York to LA, and I've been getting a lot of mail and feedback from the youth that are telling me they're thankful that they saw my film because it actually gave them something that they never got in the street. And that was a good, sound, positive advice and testimony on how to change your life around. So,
thank you. When high-profile murders happen in the city, we often will see Mayor Rahm Emanuel come out and say, more police officers on the street. Officer Holt, is what we're talking about here a policing issue?
Good evening, everyone. When you say if it's a policing issue, only to a degree. And I'm going to actually be brief on the effectiveness and the impact of what policing does and how it can impact a community to a negative or positive degree. I always say that we can't arrest ourselves out of this situation. That's impossible, which is why you have forms of community policing that in its infancy we strategize to build bridges between community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, and the police department to actually build a bridge of trust, to come up with strategies to help reduce the frequency of shootings and homicides. Unfortunately, we see where a lot of the shootings in Chicago are gang-related, as they say. I've been director of the Chicago Alternative Policing Strategy Division of the Chicago Police Department for over 2 years. And I've been a 21-year veteran of the Chicago Police Department. And I was appointed by Mayor Daley in 2010, in the summer of 2010. And at the time he wanted to recommit CAPS to the community. and come up with new ideas. And I'm going to just cut to the chase because I don't have a lot of time. We have so many other distinguished guests up here who have a story to tell. We have a program right now that is called the Campaign to Break the Code of Silence on the Street. And I heard in a lot of different conversations, there's fear of reporting crime, there's fear of retaliation, fear of repercussion, fear of being intimidated into a gang. The Campaign to Break the Code of Silence was actually born out of a campaign that we had launched called the Stop the Violence, Stop the Silence, Silence Kills. And that was soon after my son was murdered on a bus, 2007, May 10th, 2007. His name was Blair, he was 16 years old, and 5 students were shot on that bus, but Blair did not survive his injury. Single gunshot wound to the stomach. And after that, I was 16 years into my career. And at the time we came up with that campaign, we also formed a parents group called Purpose Over Pain, of which was actually born out of the shooting that occurred on the bus and Blair's death, and then other children who were killed after that and even before that. That had Blair's death, for some reason or another, gained so much national attention that I had kind of been thrust out front to kind of become a voice, something that I did not choose. As a matter of fact, I give a lot of kudos to Kids Off the Block and Diana Latiker, because the brick memorial that you see was actually started with the death of Blair, and because Blair and one of Diane's daughters, Aisha, were friends and classmates at Julian High School. So to fast forward all of that, Stop the Violence, Stop the Silence, Silence Kills, that was launched. A parents group, Purpose Over Pain, was started about 5 years ago. I was the president at the time. We had several, and all the parents there were parents who had unfortunately lost their children to gun violence. Fast forward to 5 years later, I am actually going to be resigning as president of Purpose Over Pain in December of this year, because I've been there for 5 years. So I've done all I could, and I've handed the mantle off, and let me handing the mantle off. Because actually what I have in place right now is a foundation, the Blair Hope Memorial Foundation, .org, and the Blair Hope Peace Alliance that I'm launching right now. But with the CAPS program, we have the Campaign to Break the Code of Silence on the Streets. What that does, ladies and gentlemen, is we have a 4.5-hour training where we train students in high school. We have been in over 20 focus schools, the public school system in Chicago. We have trained over 700 young people, teenagers, on how to empower themselves, to report crime, empower themselves to not live in fear in their neighborhood, how to work together, how to report crime anonymously, because we have seen, and I think I've heard it here, where we have so many people, so many young teenagers who have been impacted by violence. And we're talking about the survivors who have lost their friends, and they have been so psychologically traumatized that they don't want to talk about it. They withdraw and they begin to act out in negative behavior. So this campaign to break the code of silence has several different layers and components to it that will train young people on how to effectively report crime. And let me get to the point of snitching. And I'm going to hand over the microphone. I heard the word snitching. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a difference between snitching and reporting crime. A snitch is a person who is complicit with a person who has committed a crime. That person who has gotten caught tells on his accomplice. That's snitching. reporting a crime is crime that's being reported by law-abiding citizens, because a figure like this, if it happened to my neighbor, it could happen to me. I'll give you a case in point. Burglaries are felonies. A woman's house on the corner in broad daylight was being burglarized. She was at work. Her neighbors called the police. They called the police, one, because they said, if we let them get away with it, breaking into their home, then they'll be at my home next, breaking into mine. So collectively, there has to be a collaborative effort on the part of the community when we're talking about is violence a total police problem? Violence is a public problem. It's a community problem. It is something that you have to have law enforcement in place to at least say that we are doing our best to reduce the frequency of gun violence, to bring the bad actors and the shooters to justice in some kind of way. But we can't get that done holistically unless we have the community involved. So with that being said, if you want to know more about breaking the campaign to break the code of silence on the street, my email address is ronald.holt@chicagopolice.org, ronald.holt, H-O-L-T, @chicagopolice.org. We have a program manager, Ms. Lydia Watts, who actually puts together trainings for people in high school and at the college level. So if that's something that you think you want to be involved in, we would love to do that for you, and we can move forward collectively with the police and the community to kind of reduce the frequency of gun violence in our community. Thank you.
You can pass it to Commissioner Diaz. Commissioner Diaz, what does the Department of Family and Support Services do when it comes to combating youth violence?
So the department runs the city's social services programs from birth through the senior years, but we have youth programs as well. We serve, we probably spend a total of about $30 million annually on after school and summer programs for youth, and that touches the lives and provides enriching programs for about 35,000 youth in the city every year. But let me just say about youth violence prevention, for the first time this year under Mayor Emanuel's administration, we took a look at our youth programs and we said, you know, they're really good. They're after school. They're about helping kids with homework. They're about introducing them to things like green industry and gardening and introducing them to different kinds of enriching experiences. But the fact is that we have some serious crises facing youth today, and if we're going to be investing this kind of money annually, we should be doing that in programs that are going to impact those crisis areas. So youth violence, school dropout rates, and youth unemployment. Every single one of our dollars, we should be able to say, what is that dollar doing to help address one of those crises? So for the very first time in the past 18 months of the Mayor Emanuel administration, we have been trying to rework all of our youth programming dollars. In 2013, we're putting, we've reprogrammed almost $2 million, and Mayor Emanuel has invested another $4 million in programs that are aimed at reducing youth violence. So that said, these are going to be new programs that we're doing to put young people into jobs and give them social emotional skills, cognitive behavioral therapy, programs like the program that was spoken about a little bit earlier, the BAM program, Becoming a Man. We're going to be investing in programs like that. We're going to be working with youth that are coming out of detention centers because, I'm going to say something about Marcus's remarks in just a second, but we're going to be making sure that when youth are coming out of the state detention facilities, when they're coming, when they're on probation and they now have to work up whatever plans they have related to their probation, or when they're in the county's temporary detention facility, when they start re-entering the communities, there's going to be programs for them. It's a little bit mind-boggling that there hasn't been programs to target these young men. They're coming out of the situation that Marcus was just talking about. They're remorseful. They want to change it. They don't want to have to go back to the life that got them there in the first place. And we have had very little in the way of programming to help those young people get their high school diplomas and get a job and get job skills and start addressing some of the trauma that they've experienced in their lives and start addressing some of these issues around definitions of manhood. And so Marcus, what he talked about today, there are many different ways we can approach violence reduction. You've heard a lot about them today. There's public health approaches, and there's the police response. There's any number of ways we can do this. From our vantage point, we do prevention programs. We're in the business of making programs available when kids are not in school to keep them safe. And the thing that inspires me the most, and we can do that a number of different ways as well, but the thing that really gets me is that when we've done focus groups with young men, they say what Marcus has been saying. And it's this, that there's this role model thing going on with young males where there's the role models that exist are the wrong role models if our goal is anti-violence. That there is a yearning, a longing for, give me a father figure, give me somebody who, what you were saying is that they just want a strong parent, somebody who can just, provide some guidance, some strong mentoring to help them rethink what they've been taught about what it means to be a man, what manhood is. It's not about violence. And so I am personally inspired by trying to find program interventions that are going to start addressing that in a serious way. And the Becoming a Man program is one model. There are other models as well. We're using the University of Chicago to help us test out. We're going to be trying out different types of models. We want to see what's working and what's not working, because if something isn't working, we're going to pull our money from that. We're going to invest in what does. And so let me just leave you with that. We are, the City of Chicago is investing more than ever and will continue to, over the next few years, invest even more in anti-violence programs for youth. We're trying to be innovative, experimental. We are looking at figuring out how to target the youth coming out of our detention facilities. And I am personally trying to make sure that we are investing as much money in the kinds of programs that are addressing the issues that Marcus brought up as contributing to how his life turned out, and many, many other young men in the city of Chicago.
Michael, can you talk about the preventative program that you're involved with?
Yes, I can actually cop to Commissioner Diaz here that we actually got a grant from the city called the City Block Grant. It's with the Salvation Army and Chicago Temple Corps. And I know we've been focused on violence, but I also want to say that the kids here in Chicago, they are so talented and bright. I have one kid here that goes by the name of Deshaun. Deshaun, can you stand up? He just got awarded the Sheriff Medal of Honor for his community service. And I'm so proud of him. And my job as a youth worker and my staff is here. Can we stand up, please? This is the Teen Reach program. What we do is we try to get our kids that go to Brown Elementary or the near west side. Got a few here from Al Raby High School. And we also got a kid here by the name of Jaquan Wilson, who I'm very proud of. Jaquan, can you stand up? Yeah, man. I'm proud of him because he's been through some struggles in his life, and he's able to bounce back, and I got him back in school. He's playing on a basketball team. He's at Prologue High School. And he's on his way to being a great individual, and I'm proud of him. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because our kids are talented. And my job is to advocate for them, be that resource hub, to motivate them, encourage them that you are somebody. You can be somebody. Just got to put the work in, make the right decisions. Hang out with the right type of people. If you know that person is going to go left, you go right. So I really do care. I'm passionate about them, and I just want to, our job is to be that hub, to let them know that there are opportunities for you, and I just want to get you there. You just got to put that work into it.
What kind of support do you need in the kind of work that you're doing?
Funding is great, so always big, but mainly I've been working personally, computers. I feel like it's a big. We've been doing this program literally like with no computers, so which is great, I feel. But also it can be a negative because they're all copped in our office and we got 2 computers out of 35 kids a day. So we deal with that the best way we can. But really to get to that question is funding. The parents need to step up big, which is always a problem. But hey. I've learned to deal with that. I'm the father, the mother, the uncle, the teacher, and I've learned to deal with that. But funding, computers, and I love to work with teachers on, I'm trying to figure out a way to break through that glass with the CPS as far as really working with all our kids' teachers and see what they really need so I can really get to the bottom of why that kid can't write that sentence, but he can read that, or why can't he read at that level and not this level? So I'm really trying to figure that out. But that's pretty much that in a nutshell.
What about volunteers?
Oh, yes. Well, we're big on volunteers at Salvation Army. I actually have volunteers from Rush University that comes every Tuesday. So they're big, and they're always a big help for us. And the Salvation Army is a great hub for volunteers, but we always can use more, most definitely.
Dr. Sheehan, you're at Children's Hospital in the pediatric trauma unit. What are you seeing?
Well, I became a pediatrician because I wanted to help kids reach their full potential. But it became apparent if you're shot when you're 3 or you're 5 or you're 7, that's not going to happen. Even if you don't die from the violent event, we've heard how much it affects the rest of your lives, so you're not able to do all that you hope to do or that your parents hope that you could do. So actually, I've switched a lot of my efforts into prevention and the whole public health approach. But some of the stuff tonight, I do think there's some hope to address it, and I think there are people other than they're in this room that are interested in addressing the violence prevention problem, maybe for the first time. People that don't necessarily live in the communities that are most affected by violence. So as a physician, I sometimes see things in my clinical role or my researcher role, or I started a youth program when I was in med school at CSRS Cabrini Green, Washington Park. And so I work with children directly that way, and I take care of them in my clinic. But I realized that no one was talking to each other. We have all these different sectors, the policy sector, the clinical sector, the direct service sector. And what I think we need is to bridge those gaps. And one of the things that Lurie Children's is doing now is an initiative called SKY, or Strengthening Chicago's Youth, where we're using a public health approach, developmental approach, knowing that youth violence, community violence doesn't just start when you're 13 or you're 14. It started a long time ago, and that we need to work together, even the people who are not living in the high-risk communities, to address this important issue.
Jason, you are a juvenile probation officer. What do you do, or your office, what do you do, or what can be done to stop what we've heard tonight, this cycle of violence, the revolving door of people continuing to commit crimes?
I've been a juvenile probation officer for the last 10 years. My department, the division I work in, I'm a field officer, so I actually go out and do investigations, actually refer kids to programs, get them involved to make sure that they comply with their court orders. But my department has many purposes. We have a mentoring program there, a father initiative program. We also have the evening reporting program where kids go to the evening reporting centers from 4 to 9, you know, research, and I don't really, you know, get too much into research, but research have shown that kids usually commit crimes during this time. So my department has been very proactive as far as trying to address that population, and it also reduces the time or how many kids are detained in the detention center. But some of the things that I've heard tonight, it seems to me that we seem to lose focus on 4 major issues that affect these kids, especially with me being in this field for the last 10 years. A lot of our kids have mental health issues. They suffer from bipolar disorder. They also have depression, you know, family relations. Their father being incarcerated definitely have an effect on these kids. If a lot of these kids see their parents being incarcerated, then it has a trickle-down effect on those kids as well. Peer pressure. A lot of the kids that I deal with, they feel pressure, not necessarily to impress their friends, but to provide for their family, because their mom and the mother, you know, a single parent, and the mother is not making a lot of money. The lights are getting ready to get cut off. Can't pay the, you know, the gas bill, and drug abuse. We seem to forget that a lot of our kids, especially when we're talking about delinquency, we seem not to focus on how kids are using illegal drugs, which causes them to go out here and to commit certain crimes. I mean, I deal with from you know, armed robbery, attempted murder, murder, possession of controlled substance, unlawful use of a weapon, and it just seems to me that unless you invite the people who are directly affected by this epidemic to the table, and I'm not just talking about just the policymakers and decision makers, I'm talking about the people who are directly affected, the community, those who are involved, who specialize in this field, who have direct contact with the community. And to me, what I would have liked to see done here tonight would actually invite some of how we categorize these kids as delinquents. We seem to forget that these kids, they make mistakes. That's all it is. I don't think a lot of the kids go out here and we try to label them as criminals. They make bad decisions, and that's it. Some of them are definitely remorseful. I've seen a lot of kids, especially being in this field for the last 10 years, who don't want this type of life. But I would definitely like for you know, some of these so-called delinquents to participate in something of this program, because I believe each and every person can affect another person. So, but my department, we definitely try to address, especially dealing with youth violence in a number of ways. So, but you know, we have to do something about the policies. We have to share resources. I mean, if we had some of the resources that are provided in areas like Lincoln Park that are reallocated to Lawndale, South Lawndale, and Inglewood, then I think that would give a lot of our kids a running chance, and some of the parents. If the kids see their parents doing well, then it definitely would have a triple down effect on the kids. So, but we need to share the resources.